Hello, hello. This is Daniel Ashcraft. I am recording for the AG History, Missions, and Governance final for the Pathways course. I'm, of course, Daniel Ashcraft. Like I said, I kind of want to just go over the start, a very brief explanation of the start of the beginning of the AG Church and AG denomination, but also kind of clarify the difference between Pentecostalism and charismatic renewal. So as we get into it, first we begin with Charles Fox Parham. He teaches and preaches out of El Dorado Springs, or taught out of El Dorado Springs, Missouri. His primary ministry was to the poor and undereducated. One of these people would be William J. Seymour, which we'll get to in a second. But Parham's main teaching point was that distinguished him from other preachers of his time was the connection between tongues and the baptism of the Holy Spirit. Typically, the church has distinguished the two away from each other, but Charles kind of looked at Acts, and so did William J. Seymour. They both looked at Acts as a prescriptive way to live life, and the baptism of the Holy Spirit and speaking in tongues was something to strive for in your faith. Um, as I said, William J. Seymour would be taught by Parham. Um, Initially, he would just sit outside the sermon and take notes, but later on, he would be taught and become a protege. And then he would later move to Los Angeles, California, and kind of be at the head of the Azusa Street revival in 1906 to 1915. Something I find interesting about this whole situation is that the first couple of years that William J. Seymour taught and preached, he did not have the baptism of the Holy Spirit, or he did not speak in tongues for that entire time, or for the first couple of years until he got baptized later. Um, Kind of cut to a few years later, we have the first General Council in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Go Hogs! And out of that, we find the Assemblies of God. Um, and the first general superintendent is Ian Bell. Next, I kind of want to just get into the Pentecostal and charismatic renewal, the kind of the phases and what distinguishes between the Pentecostal and charismatic people. First, we have classic Pentecostalism, early 1900s. This is typically what a lot of people think, and a lot of people will stereotype Pentecostalism, um, kind of the holiness movement of long hair, long skirts, no makeup, then sanctification, and then the outpouring of the Spirit, or outpouring of the gifts, typically tongues. Some of the other things that distinguish Pentecostalism from other mainstream denominations was that Pentecostalism and Pentecostal churches were racially diverse, and a lot of times the congregation was full of poor, illiterate, and uneducated peoples. Um, Next, we have the charismatic renewal in the 1950s to the 1960s. This is an interesting movement where we see the mainline or mainstream churches embrace some of the Pentecostal like qualities, primary emotionalism and the um, I guess a more emotional services. Um, they may or may not look like the stereotypical Pentecostals from the first wave, but this is where we see a lot of Baptist and Methodist churches kind of getting in onto this revival of their congregations. Next, we have the neo-charismatic movement. Um, some people will say it's from the 1980s to today. This is your wave of signs and wonders. We see a lot of televangelists who kind of go against the stereotypical Pentecostals of no makeup, longer hair, longer skirts, or longer dresses or whatever, to, oh yes, everyone's people were wearing makeup, especially if you're on television. You could be wearing a bit more fancy clothing, you could be a bit more out there when it comes to your appearance. But we do see a lot of televangelists showcasing signs and wonders. Some may be faked, some may be not. I don't know. But we do see the further intensification of the outpouring of the Holy Spirit. Some historians and some scholars are saying that we might be in the fourth wave right now, and some are saying that this fourth wave is kind of has an emphasis on bringing together the head and then the heart of just different biblical scholars. So now we see this return of great scholars like C.S. Lewis and then Bonhoeffer and then other biblical scholars in the more mainstream or layman's Christian. Not that there was ever anything against intellect in the previous denominations or previous phases, but we do see more of an emphasis now than we had in the past. But that's all I have today, and thank you.